Okay, let's unpack this. Ever been in a situation where you know you need to say something important, but what actually comes out is, well, less than ideal?
Oh, definitely.
Like you're aiming for a thoughtful request and end up sounding like a disgruntled badger? I know I have. As one of our sources hilariously put it, describing a verbal slip, it was the difference between asking for potatoes and demanding someone's untimely demise.
We've all been there, right?
We really have.
What's fascinating is how often those high-stakes, uncomfortable conversations um, trip us up. The moments where we need to be direct and honest, but the fear of things going sideways just takes over.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We're tackling the art of crucial confrontations, based on the book of the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you hear confrontation, forget the image of raised voices and slammed doors. The book's core message is clear. A crucial confrontation is about holding someone accountable face to face with openness, honesty, candor, and respect.
That last part is key. Respect.
Think of it as having the courage to speak up when it truly matters. At work, at home, in all those relationships that shape our lives.
And if we connect this to your own experiences, listener, you've probably seen how avoiding these tough talks can actually create bigger problems down the line.
Yeah, the silence can be deafening sometimes, or lead to blow-ups later.
Right. The author spent over 10,000 hours observing people who navigate these situations effectively, and what they found is that when crucial confrontations are handled well, problems get solved, and relationships often become stronger as a result.
That's the real win, isn't it? It's not about winning an argument. It's about getting your needs met while actually strengthening those connections that are important to you.
Strengthening, not just surviving.
So if you've ever walked away from a difficult situation feeling unheard or like things are still hanging in the air, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to break down some really practical insights, things you can start using right away to navigate these tricky moments more effectively.
But this raises a key question, one I'm sure you've pondered. How do we even figure out which issues actually deserve one of these crucial confrontations?
Good point. Not every little annoyance needs a full sit-down.
Right, exactly. You'd be having confrontations all day long.
Right. And the book offers a super useful filter for this. It's called CPR, Content, Pattern, and Relationship. Okay, let's unpack this.
CPR. Got it.
So, content is the specific, isolated event. Imagine a colleague misses a deadline on a joint project. That's a content issue, a one-off thing.
Precisely. Just the facts of that single incidence. But then you need to look for a pattern. Has this become a habit?
Okay.
The book gives the example of a front desk clerk who's consistently late. Addressing a single instance of lateness that's the content is one thing.
Yeah.
But repeated tardiness points to a pattern that needs a different kind of conversation. Recognizing the pattern helps you understand the real scope of the problem. It's not just this time.
It's every time, or lots of times. And finally, relationship. How is this issue impacting your connection with the other person? Think about those unannounced visits from family members, as the book mentions. The content is a single drop-in. Maybe annoying, but okay.
Right.
But if it happens repeatedly, that's the pattern. And it can really strain the relationship and your personal boundaries. That's when the relationship aspect becomes the crucial point to address. It's about trust or respect or shared understanding.
What's fascinating here, and something for you, listener, to really consider, is that the initial thing that bugs you might not be the core issue at all.
How so?
Well, the book emphasizes digging deeper. What are you really upset about? What outcome are you hoping for? And just as importantly, what negative consequences do you want to avoid for yourself, for others involved, and for the relationship itself?
So it's not just reacting to the surface thing. It's like the example in the book about the pickup truck.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
The immediate concern is the kids riding unsafely in the back.
Yeah.
That's the content. But when you think about it, the deeper issue, as the book points out, is the spouse consistently making unilateral decisions that go against agreed-upon family rules.
Exactly. That undermining of mutual agreement is the core relationship issue that needs to be confronted, not just the immediate safety concern, though that's important too, obviously.
Okay, so you've identified what truly needs to be addressed using CPR. The next hurdle is how you approach it. Mentally, I mean.
Right. And the book introduces a concept called the path to action. It's essentially the mental steps we take when faced with a situation. We see or hear something.
We observe.
We observe something, then we tell ourselves the story about why it happened. That story triggers a feeling, and that feeling leads to our actions. See, story, feel, act.
Okay, here's where it gets really insightful, I think, for listeners. The danger lies in those ugly stories we tell ourselves almost instantly.
Uh-huh. The negative ones.
Yeah, we tend to jump to negative conclusions about other people's intentions without really knowing the full picture. The book touches on the fundamental attribution error.
Which sounds complicated, but it's basically our tendency to blame someone's character like they're lazy, they're inconsiderate, rather than considering their circumstances. Dispositional versus situational.
We blame who they are, not what might be happening around them.
Exactly. Think about a friend who's late meeting you. An ugly story might be, they don't respect my time, they're always so unreliable. That's blaming character.
Right, but the reality could be they were stuck in nightmare traffic or dealing with a family emergency. Something situational,
And our initial story fuels feelings of annoyance or anger.
which then shapes how we act when they finally arrive. Maybe we're cold or passive-aggressive.
Or maybe we explode.
Yeah.
And these ugly stories have real-world consequences, don't they? The book talks about silence and violence.
Yeah, silence is when we just avoid the issue. Maybe we smile and nod, but inside we're fuming, stewing on that story.
And violence isn't just physical, obviously. It includes things like sarcastic remarks, raising your voice, interrupting constantly, dominating the conversation. Basically anything that makes the other person feel unsafe or attacked, shutting them down.
And often, as the book highlights, a sudden outburst that violence is the result of a long period of silence where those negative stories have just been allowed to fester and grow.
Like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So to break this cycle, the key is to actively challenge your own narrative. You need to tell the rest of the story.
How do you do that?
A crucial question to ask yourself, as the book suggests, is why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do that?
Okay, I like that. It forces you to pause.
It does. It forces you to consider other possible explanations beyond your initial negative judgment. Maybe they are reasonable, rational, and decent, and something else is going on.
And to help you really broaden your perspective, the book introduces the 6 sources of influence model. This sounds a bit academic, but it's actually really practical.
It really is. It encourages you to look beyond just an individual's motivation and ability, which is where we usually stop.
Right, we think they don't want to or they can't.
Exactly. This model prompts you to consider influences from self, so their own drive and skills, yes, but also others, like how social pressures or support from colleagues play a role.
Okay.
And things, their physical environment, the tools they have, available resources, incentives, rewards, that kind of stuff.
So it's a much wider lens. What's particularly helpful for you, listener, to understand is how often we oversimplify and focus solely on that self-motivation box.
Totally. We assume someone isn't doing something because they simply don't want to. End of story.
But perhaps they lack the necessary skills, that's ability. Or maybe their colleagues are inadvertently hindering them, that's others. Or maybe they don't have the right tools or the rewards aren't aligned, that's things.
The book's example of the unmotivated team leader is a great illustration of this.
Yeah, you might initially think they're just lazy or checked out self-motivation again.
But the full story, using those 6 sources, could reveal they lack the necessary materials, which is a things problem, or they're facing conflicting pressures from upper management, an others problem. It's rarely just one thing.
So you've figured out what to confront using CPR, and you're starting to get a handle on your own internal story, challenging those ugly assumptions. Now, how do you actually initiate that conversation?
Okay, so how do you actually start? The book emphasizes, and really this is crucial, that creating a sense of safety is absolutely paramount.
Safety first. Makes sense.
If the other person feels threatened or attacked, the conversation is, well, it's unlikely to go well. Probably doomed from the start.
Okay, so how do we build that safety?
That's right. The book outlines a few key ways to start with safety. One crucial element is establishing mutual purpose.
Mutual purpose, like common ground.
Exactly. Clearly communicating that you want to find a solution that works for everyone and that you value the relationship. You're in this together.
Okay. And the other?
Mutual respect. Making sure the other person feels heard and valued as a person, even if you disagree strongly on the issue at hand.
So I respect you, even though this thing you did is causing a problem.
Precisely. And sometimes, even when you think you're being clear, your intentions can be misconstrued. We've all had that happen.
Oh, yeah. You say something you think is fine, and they take it completely the wrong way.
That's where a technique called contrasting can be really helpful. It's about clarifying what you don't mean or intend, as well as what you do mean.
So you head off the misunderstanding.
Exactly. The book provides great examples, like saying, look, I don't want you to think I'm not grateful for your help. I really appreciate it. That's the don't want.
Okay.
I just want to talk about how we can communicate better about deadlines in the future. That's the do want. It helps preemptively address potential
I
defensiveness.
like that. Don't do. It's clear.
Once you've worked to create that sense of safety, it's time to actually, state the issue. They call it share your path.
Your path to concluding there's a problem.
Right. And the book recommends starting with the facts. Stick to what you actually observed and heard. Behavior.
Just the objective stuff. What, not why.
Exactly. Keep it external, observable. Avoid adding your interpretations or judgments at the stage. Then you can tentatively share your interpretation of what happened.
Tentatively being the key word there.
Absolutely. Using non-absolute language like, I was wondering if, or the story I started telling myself was, or I got the impression that, not, you obviously think.
Makes sense. It leaves room for their perspective.
Which leads to the final step here. Always end with a question.
Invite them in.
Sincerely invite the other person's perspective. What's your take on this, or how do you see it? This shows that you're genuinely open to hearing their side and that you want to understand their point of view, not just lecture them.
And the book cautions against things like passing the buck, playing read my mind, or showing disrespect, even subtly, right? Because those just kill the safety you tried to build.
Instantly. All that effort, gone. Now let's assume you've had a productive conversation, you've shared your path safely, they've shared theirs, and you've clearly outlined the issue. How do you ensure the other person is actually motivated to make a change?
Right, because understanding isn't the same as doing something about it.
Exactly. And the book challenges some common assumptions about motivation. It suggests that things like, being super charismatic or using raw power or just dangling external rewards, they aren't always the most effective drivers.
Interesting. So what is more effective?
The focus should be on helping them see the natural consequences.
Natural consequences.
Help the other person connect the dots and see the real-world impact of their actions on themselves, maybe on their colleagues, on the team's goals, on the company, or on the relationship itself.
Can make it real for them.
Yeah. The book gives a powerful example of a manager explaining to an employee how their repeated tardiness is impacting team morale and causing delays on project deadlines. That's connecting the action directly to tangible negative consequences for others.
Got it. What else works?
Another effective technique, as the book describes, is to hold up a mirror.
Hold up a mirror.
Gently, respectfully, describe how their behavior is being perceived by others. Often people genuinely aren't fully aware of the impression they're making. When you do X, some people interpret it as Y.
Okay. Kind of like feedback on their impact.
Exactly. You can also connect to existing carrots and sticks, link the desired behaviors to their existing goals, values, or the rewards and consequences already built into the system. Make it relevant to their world.
And the book also advises you to stop when you reach critical mass.
Right.
What does that mean?
Basically, don't beat a dead horse. Once you feel the other person understands the issue, sees the consequences, and seems likely to take action, don't over-explain or belabor the point. Trust them to get it.
Okay, know when to stop talking.
And it's important to match your method to the situation. Maybe simple teaching is enough if someone is just unaware of the consequences. You might need more dialogue and exploring their values if they resist. And sometimes discipline, a more direct, serious tone, outlining specific next steps and potential formal consequences is necessary for repeated or serious issues.
So it's adaptable.
Very. And what happens when your attempts to influence motivation seem to fall flat, when they just don't seem moved?
Yeah, what then?
The book suggests being transparent about your own limits and coping mechanisms if the behavior continues.
Like what?
For instance, if someone continues to interrupt you despite you pointing it out and explaining the impact, you might eventually say something like, "Look, I find it really hard to keep my train of thought when I'm interrupted frequently. If this continues, I might need to end our conversation and we can try again later when we can both focus on listening."
So you state the consequence for you of their continued action.
Exactly. It helps them see the direct, immediate impact their behavior is having on the interaction itself and on you. It's not a threat, it's a statement of reality.
Okay, so you've addressed the motivation, hopefully successfully, but how do you make it easy for the desired change to actually happen? Is it always about motivation?
Not at all, and this is a huge point in the book. It emphasizes diagnosing whether the issue is a matter of can't versus won't. Motivation versus ability.
Don't just assume it's won't.
Right. Don't automatically assume a lack of motivation when someone isn't doing what's expected. Really explore if there are underlying ability issues. Are there barriers making it hard for them to do the right thing?
Your role then becomes removing those barriers. It's not just about trying to inspire them.
No, you need to make it simpler for them to succeed. Maybe they need training or resources or clearer instructions or less red tape.
So how do you figure out what those barriers are?
Well, the book suggests involving the other person in finding solutions to potential ability blocks. Ask questions like, what do you think would make it easier to? Or what's getting in the way of you being able to?
So you don't have to have all the answers yourself.
Absolutely not. Co-create the solution. And don't bias the response by suggesting your own pet solution first. Really listen to what they think the obstacles are.
And this is where revisiting that 6 sources of influence model can be incredibly helpful again, right?
Yes, it's perfect for this. It allows you to systematically think through potential ability barriers across all those different areas, their personal skills, self-ability, help or hindrance from others, others' ability, and resources or processes, things ability.
It gives you a checklist almost.
It really does. Sometimes, based on that diagnosis, you might need to advise where necessary, offer specific guidance, teach a skill, or point out stumbling blocks they might not be aware of.
And crucially, the book says, create a safe environment where they feel comfortable identifying root causes, even if those causes involve you.
That's a tough one, but vital. Asking for feedback, like, is there anything I'm doing that makes this harder for you, can be incredibly powerful. You might need to prime the pump by reassuring them it's about solving the problem together, not assigning blame.
Okay, so motivation addressed, ability barriers tackled. What's the final piece?
Finally, after the crucial conversation, it's vital to move to action. You need a concrete plan.
Right, because otherwise the whole conversation might just fade away and nothing actually changes. Lots of talk, no action.
Exactly. The book stresses the importance of creating a clear plan to avoid future misunderstandings and ensure accountability. They introduce the WWWF framework, who will do what by when, and what's the follow-up plan.
WWWF. Okay, break that down.
Simple but powerful. The who needs to be a specific person assigned to each task, no vague someone or the team.
Got it. Named individuals.
The what should be a clearly defined deliverable. What does done look like? Be specific. Avoid ambiguity.
Not just improve communication, but send the weekly summary email.
Perfect example. The when requires specific deadlines, days, dates, times. Avoid vague terms like soon or next week.
Nail it down.
And maybe the most often missed part, the follow-up. Schedule a specific time right then to check in on progress. How will we know this actually happened?
Ah, the accountability loop. The book distinguishes between 2 types of follow-up, right?
Yes, a checkup, which you initiate. This is often used for more important or risky tasks, or maybe with individuals who are newer to a task or have struggled before. You're checking up on them.
Okay, and the other?
A check back, where the other person is responsible for initiating the follow-up and reporting back to you. This is typically better for more routine tasks and with experienced, reliable individuals. You trust them to check back with you.
So you tailor the follow-up. The key takeaway here seems to be avoiding both extremes. Micromanagement, which is controlling and stifles autonomy,
Right, hovering over them.
and complete abandonment, where there's no follow-up at all and things inevitably fall through the cracks.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. And the book suggests, maybe a bit cynically, but probably accurately, that often the real reason for lack of follow-up is simply our own desire to avoid further potential discomfort.
We had the tough conversation. We don't want another one if they haven't done it.
Pretty much. But follow-up is essential for results.
Now, even with the best preparation, the best CPR, the safest start, the clearest WWWF, crucial confrontations can sometimes take unexpected turns, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. Things go off script. The book offers guidance on how to stay focused and flexible when that happens.
Like what kind of things?
Maybe the other person becomes really defensive or shuts down, safety is lost, or trust feels broken because they say something came up as an excuse for not doing what they agreed to.
Yeah, the vague excuse.
Or a completely new, maybe even bigger issue surfaces during the conversation, or emotions just run really high, theirs or yours.
So what do you do then? Just push through.
No, the key is to address these new developments consciously, rather than just getting swept away by them or trying to ignore them. Don't be forced into reacting. Choose how to respond.
Okay, so be deliberate. If safety is lost, for example.
If safety is lost, they get defensive, angry, silently. The advice is to step back from the content of the conversation temporarily. Actively work to rebuild safety.
Right.
Remind them of your mutual purpose. Remember, we're trying to solve this together. Reaffirm mutual respect. I really value your perspective. Maybe use contrasting again. I don't want to blame you. I do want to understand what happened.
Right.
Once safety feels restored, then you can return to the original issue.
Step out, rebuild, step back in. What about broken trust, like that something came up excuse?
Address the broken promise directly but safely. Talk about the pattern if it's recurring. Reiterate clear expectations about commitments and emphasize the importance of them communicating early if obstacles arise, not just using vague excuses after the fact.
Yeah, address the meta issue of reliability. And if a totally new, bigger problem emerges,
The book suggests you bookmark the original issue. Acknowledge it, say, okay, that's important and we need to come back to it, but then consciously decide to address the new, more pressing concern first. Then, after dealing with that, you decide together whether it's necessary or timely to revisit the initial topic you bookmarked.
prioritize consciously. And finally, when emotions escalate, yours or theirs.
Remember that emotions are often fueled by the stories we tell ourselves that path to action again. Try to help them and yourself pause and reevaluate those stories. What story is driving this anger or fear? Can we look at the facts differently? Can we find a more generous interpretation?
Get back to the source of the feeling.
Exactly. Address the story, not just the emotion.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of ground covered. So to bring it all together for you, our listener, here are maybe a few key actionable insights from our deep dive into crucial confrontations. First, when you do need to have that difficult conversation.
And you've decided it's necessary using CPR.
Right. Ground yourself in the facts of the situation and actively, consciously work to create an environment where both you and the other person feel safe to speak openly and honestly, that mutual purpose and respect.
Absolutely critical first step. Second, when trying to understand why someone isn't meeting expectations or why a problem exists, broaden your perspective. Don't just leap to conclusions about their personality or motivation.
Use those 6 sources of influence.
Yes. Consider all the potential influences at play: their skills, the support or pressure they receive from others, and the systems, resources, and environment they're working within. Look beyond the individual.
Good reminder. And third, once you've had that crucial conversation and agreed on a course of action, don't drop the ball.
Please don't drop the ball.
Create that clear, detailed WWWF plan: who, what, when. Follow up with specific responsibilities and deadlines, and actually do the follow-up to ensure progress and accountability.
Mastering these crucial confrontations, it really is an invaluable skill set. It can significantly improve your relationships, your results at work, just your overall effectiveness and well-being in all areas of your life. It's powerful stuff.
It really sounds like it. So here's maybe a final thought for you, listener, to chew on. Think about a crucial conversation you might be avoiding right now. We probably all have one.
Pretty likely.
What's the underlying fear or discomfort that's holding you back? Is it the story you're telling yourself? Fear of their reaction? Uncertainty about how to start?
And consider how the tools and principles we've discussed today, CPR, mastering your stories, building safety, WWF, could empower you to approach that situation with maybe not no fear, but certainly with greater confidence and skill.
Perhaps taking that closer look at the stories you're telling yourself about the situation and about the other person is the most powerful first step you can take.
Absolutely. Remember, you're not alone in finding these conversations challenging. Everyone does. But by understanding these principles and, crucially, putting them into practice, you really can learn to navigate those deep dives into crucial communication with much greater clarity and achieve far more positive outcomes.